In November last year, the Paris Agreement came into effect. At the centre of this new international agreement is a critically important goal: to limit global warming to 1.5 to 2 degrees above pre-industrial levels. You can see from the green lines on this slide the emission reductions we need globally to achieve that goal. Now, the main mechanism under the Paris Agreement for achieving this goal is called the Pledge and Review mechanism. The Paris Agreement requires countries to lodge pledges every 5 years about future emission reductions following global stocktakes of progress. There are a couple of problems with this mechanism. One problem is countries might not set their pledges at the right level. They might not add up to the emission reductions that are needed. And so far, unfortunately, that is the case, as you can see from the blue line on this slide. It's better than the orange business as usual line, but still not good enough. The second problem is that countries may make pledges, but then not meet them. And this is a real risk because under the Paris Agreement, there are no penalties for non-compliance other than reputational damage. As a lawyer, I'm interested in how national laws can help overcome these problems, these two problems of inadequate targets and inadequate implementation. I recommend that for Australia we need two key reforms. The first reform is a national climate law that guides Australian governments to set targets at responsible levels, representing a fair share of global efforts, and that holds governments accountable for meeting those targets. I examine a leading example of such a law, the UK Climate Change Act, and consider the prospects for reproducing a similar law in Australia. The second thing we need to do is to enact climate laws that will actually reduce emissions reliably over time. And we can draw lessons here from both Australia's experience and from the regulatory literature. Some of those lessons are that we need to move away from regulatory strategies that experience has shown reduce emissions on paper, but not in practice. We also need to make climate laws that last, that sustain effort over political cycles. And we can do that through techniques like independent institutions, guaranteed funding, and legislated targets. And finally, we need to tap into the strength of our federal system by ensuring that national laws provide a floor that states and territories can build on, rather than a ceiling that contains state and territory emission reduction ambitions. With these reforms, Australia can play its full part in achieving the aims of the Paris Agreement and keeping a lid on global warming. Thanks.